Elder Cavi stood in the crumbling communication center. His three-fingered hands shaking as explosions lit up the purple sky above Thylon Prime. Just this morning, his people had been tending their crystal gardens and harvesting the golden grain that fed half the sector. Children had been playing in the meadows while their parents worked the fertile soil that made their world so valuable. Now, those same fields burned under alien fire. The Brutok ships hung in the sky like dark metal vultures, their hulls scarred from countless conquests. Kavi had heard the stories from refugee ships that occasionally passed through their system. The Brutok took everything: the land, the resources, the people. They turned peaceful farmers into slaves and beautiful worlds into strip mines. His people had always believed their remote location would keep them safe. They were wrong. "Elder, the main transmitter is down," reported Nala, one of his young assistants, her voice cracking with fear. "We cannot reach the Galactic Council or any nearby systems." Cavi closed his eyes, feeling the weight of 5 million lives on his shoulders. The Thylon had no military. They had no weapons beyond farming tools. Their philosophy had always been simple: grow food, share it freely, and live in peace. But philosophy could not stop plasma, cannons, or deflect missile strikes. Then he remembered something his grandfather had told him decades ago. Deep in the colony's oldest archives, buried beneath layers of agricultural data and weather reports, lay something from the early days of their settlement. An emergency beacon, ancient and nearly forgotten, designed by the first colonists who had feared exactly this kind of disaster, racing through corridors filled with smoke and falling debris. Cavi reached the archive vault. His fingers found the hidden panel his grandfather had described, revealing a small, dusty device that looked impossibly old. The beacon's power cells showed just enough charge for one transmission, with Brutok landing craft now visible through the shattered windows. Cavi activated the device. He spoke quickly into the transmitter, not knowing if anyone would ever hear his words. He told them about his people, about the invasion, about the coordinates of their dying world. Then he sent the message out into the vast darkness of space. A tiny cry for help from a world that had never hurt anyone, as enemy soldiers stormed the building. Cavi could only pray that somewhere among the billions of stars, someone with the power to help would hear their desperate whisper and choose to answer. "Lieutenant." Jin rubbed his tired eyes and took another sip of cold coffee. 3 months into his rotation at the Terran Deep Space Monitoring Station, and most nights were the same endless stream of cosmic background noise, stellar radiation, and the occasional trading vessel transmission. The station orbited at the very edge of human space, a lonely outpost listening for signals from the unknown regions beyond. At 0347 hours, something different caught his attention. A weak signal, barely distinguishable from space static, pulsed through his headphones. Jin leaned forward, adjusting the receivers and boosting the signal strength. The transmission was clearly artificial, but unlike anything in human databases. "You, get over here," Jin called to his colleague at the linguistics station. "I've got something weird." Yu rolled her chair over, pulling up the signal analysis on her screen. The waveform patterns were unlike anything they'd encountered before. "This isn't from any known human colony or trading partner," she said, frowning at the data. "The mathematical structure is completely alien." Over the next 6 hours, you worked to decode the transmission, while Jin traced its origin point. The signal had traveled for months across the void, growing weaker with each passing light year. When you finally cracked the basic translation protocols, both officers fell silent. The message was a desperate plea for help. An alien species called the Thylon were under attack by something called the Brutok Empire. The transmission included star charts, population numbers, and a heartbreaking description of their peaceful farming world being destroyed. The final part of the message contained coordinates and a simple request: if anyone received this signal, please help them. Jin immediately forwarded the decoded message to Earth Command. Within 12 hours, It reached the desk of Admiral Wan, one of humanity's most experienced military leaders. Wan had spent decades studying threats beyond human space, and the name Brutok made his blood run cold. The Brutok Empire was already in human intelligence files as a major threat. They were a militaristic species that swept through star systems like locusts, enslaving populations and stripping worlds bare of resources. Human scouts had been tracking their expansion for years, knowing that eventually the Brutok would turn their attention toward human space. Admiral Wan stared at the translated message for a long moment. These Thylan aliens had sent their cry for help into the void, not knowing if anyone would hear them or care enough to respond. They were farmers and gardeners, completely defenseless against one of the galaxy's most brutal empires. The Admiral reached for his secure communication device. It was time for humanity to make a choice that would echo across the stars. Admiral Wan stood before the emergency session of Earth's High Command, the translated alien message still fresh in everyone's minds. Around the circular tables sat humanity's top military leaders, their faces grim as they processed what they'd just heard. A peaceful species was being slaughtered by an empire that would eventually threaten human space anyway. The Brutok Empire has been on our watch list for 3 years, Wan explained, pulling up holographic star maps. Intelligence suggests they're working their way through this entire sector, enslaving every species they encounter. If we don't stop them now, they'll be at our doorstep within a decade. General Park leaned forward. Sir, we're talking about a deployment 400 light-years from our nearest base. The logistics are challenging, but not impossible, Wan interrupted. More importantly, we have a chance to stop a genocidal empire before they become an existential threat to humanity. And frankly, these Thylan people asked for our help. That means something. Within 48 hours, the largest human military mobilization in history was underway. The massive orbital shipyards around Earth buzzed with activity as vessels that had never operated together were formed into a single fleet. The Dreadnought, Thunder, humanity's newest and most powerful warship, would serve as the flagship Captain Tay received her orders while overseeing final training exercises for the 15th Marine Division. Her troops were tough soldiers, hardened by Earth's brutal environments and constant conflicts. They'd trained in the frozen wastelands of Antarctica, the burning deserts of Africa, and the toxic swamps of South America, where most alien species would die within hours. Humans called these places home. Commander Na, meanwhile, prepared her fighter squadrons aboard the carrier Horizon. Her pilots were young but experienced, veterans of the asteroid mining conflicts and pirate suppression campaigns. They'd grown up in Earth's crushing gravity and poisonous atmosphere, making them faster and stronger than most aliens could imagine. As the fleet assembled, word spread through human space about the mission. Volunteer ships arrived from Mars, Titan, and the outer colonies. Cargo vessels loaded with supplies, medical ships staffed with volunteer doctors, even civilian transports converted into troop carriers. Humanity had made its choice. The alien message had traveled for months across the void, a desperate cry from strangers who didn't even know humans existed. But Earth's children had heard that cry, and they were coming with the full might of a species that had clawed its way to the stars from the most dangerous planet in the known galaxy. 50,000 soldiers from the Deathworld, called Earth, were about to remind the galaxy why apex predators protect the innocent. Commander Vex sat in his command chair aboard the Brutok flagship, reviewing the latest intelligence reports with growing confusion. His scouts had detected an approaching fleet, but the data made no sense. According to their analysis, these newcomers called themselves humans and claimed to come from something called Earth. Sir, we've intercepted more of their communications, reported his intelligence officer, sliding a datapad across the metal table. They appear to be bipedal mammals, approximately 2 meters tall, with soft skin and no natural armor or claws. Vex laughed, his forearms gesturing dismissively. Mammals, soft-skinned creatures dare to challenge the Brutok Empire. His species had conquered dozens of worlds, with their natural strength and armored hides. These humans sounded pathetically weak, but as more intelligence poured in, Vex's amusement began to fade. The humans had classified their homeworld as something called a Class 12 Death World. That designation was so extreme that Vex had to look it up in their xenobiology databases. What he found made his blood run cold. Earth was a nightmare planet. The gravity was nearly twice what most spacefaring species could survive. The atmosphere contained enough oxygen to make most aliens dizzy, while toxic gases, like nitrogen, made up most of the air. The planet's weather systems were so violent that storms regularly destroyed entire regions. Temperatures ranged from freezing wastelands that would kill most life forms to deserts hot enough to cook flesh. Even worse, the planet was crawling with predators. Vex stared at footage of creatures called sharks, tigers, and bears, monsters that would terrify warriors. Yet humans had not only survived alongside these beasts, they had become the apex predators of their own world. The intercepted training footage was the most disturbing part. Vex watched human soldiers march through frozen landscapes, wearing only thin cloth, their breath forming clouds in air so cold it would freeze Brutok blood solid. He saw them crossing burning deserts under a sun that would blind most species, carrying heavy equipment for days without rest. One video showed human marines training underwater, holding their breath for minutes while navigating through crushing depths. Another displayed soldiers eating plants that would poison any Brutok who touched them, treating deadly toxins like simple nutrients. "Commander," his officer whispered, "there are 50,000 of them coming. 50,000 apex predators from a world that kills everything else." Vex stared at the approaching fleet markers on his tactical display, finally understanding what they faced. These weren't soft mammals. They were survivors of the most hostile environment in known space, and they were coming to judge the Brutok for their crimes. The edge of the Thylan system erupted in brilliant flashes of light as 300 human warships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. Admiral Juan stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Thunder, watching the tactical displays update as his fleet spread across the system like a massive net. The Brutok had nowhere to run. "Sir, we're detecting 112 enemy vessels," reported Lieutenant Kim from the sensor station. "They're concentrated around the planet, with several ships stationed at the major mining facilities." Juan nodded grimly. The Brutok had turned the beautiful farming world into a resource extraction operation, complete with orbital refineries and slave processing centers. Intelligence showed over 4 million Thylan survivors working in forced labor camps across the planet's surface. "Open a channel to the Brutok command ship," Juan ordered. His communications officer, Ensign Lee, nodded and activated the transmitters. The message Admiral Juan broadcast was deliberately simple and direct. "This is Admiral Juan of the Terran Navy. You have invaded and enslaved a peaceful species. Release all prisoners immediately and evacuate this system. You have exactly 24 hours to comply. This is your only warning." Aboard the Brutok flagship, Commander Vex stared at the human fleet with a mixture of fear and stubborn pride. Despite everything he'd learned about these Deathworlders, backing down would mean disgrace. The Brutok Empire had never retreated from inferior species, and he wouldn't be the first to start. "Send our response," Vex growled to his communications officer. "Tell these mammals that the Brutok Empire does not negotiate with prey animals. If they want this system, they can try to take it." The arrogant reply reached human ears within minutes, causing angry murmurs across every bridge in the fleet. Captain Tay, monitoring from the marine transport ship, felt her jaw clench. These aliens had just sealed their own fate, down on the planet's surface. In the sprawling labor camps, Some Thailand prisoners had managed to access communication frequencies, despite their captors' attempts to block outside signals. Elder Kavi, now weak from months of forced labor, gathered with other survivors around a hidden receiver. They listened to the exchange between the two fleets, hardly daring to believe what they were hearing. Someone had actually received their desperate message. Someone had traveled across the galaxy to help them. As word spread through the camps, in whispered conversations, 5 million enslaved Thailand began to pray to their ancient gods, begging for deliverance from the Deathworld. Warriors who had come to answer their call. The 24-hour countdown had begun. The 24 hours passed in tense silence, broken only by the steady approach of Admiral Wan's fleet toward the inner system. At exactly 0600 hours, the Brutok made their choice. Commander Vex's flagship opened fire with every weapon it had, sending streams of plasma bolts racing across the void, toward the human dreadnought. Thunder. The alien weapons struck human hull plating with brilliant flashes of light and energy. Aboard the Thunder, Admiral Wan felt the ship barely shudder under the impact. The armor plating, designed to withstand collisions with space debris traveling at incredible speeds, absorbed the Brutok plasma like it was nothing more than bright lights. "Sir, enemy weapons are having minimal effect," reported Lieutenant Kim, almost sounding surprised. "Hull integrity at 99.7%. Juan smiled coldly. "Return fire. All batteries." The Thunder's main guns spoke with the voice of Earth's fury. Massive kinetic rounds, simple chunks of metal accelerated to incredible speeds, slammed into the Brutok flagship. The enemy shields, designed to deflect energy weapons, offered no protection against solid projectiles traveling at a significant fraction of light speed. The first volley punched straight through the alien ship's defenses and tore massive holes in its hull. Fighter pilot Lieutenant Bo launched from the carrier horizon, along with her squadron, diving into the chaos of the expanding battle. Her small craft danced between enemy fire, moving with reflexes honed by Earth's crushing gravity and violent weather. The Brutok fighters, built for species with slower reaction times, couldn't match her speed or agility. "This is Red Leader," Bo reported over the comm system, lining up her targeting system on an enemy cruiser, beginning attack run on the mining station escorts. Her missiles, guided by computers that had learned to navigate Earth's electromagnetic storms and asteroid fields, found their targets with deadly precision. Enemy ships that had terrorized peaceful worlds for decades exploded under the assault from humanity's children. Within the first hour, 20 Brutok vessels were destroyed or crippled. Their formation broke apart as panic spread through their ranks. These weren't the easy victories they were used to. The humans fought like the apex predators they were, coordinating their attacks with deadly efficiency. Commander Vex watched his fleet disintegrate around him, finally understanding the true horror of challenging a species that had survived on a death world. By the 4th hour, half his ships were gone. The survivors began breaking away from the battle, desperate to escape the relentless human advance. The Deathworlders had come to deliver justice, and nothing in the galaxy could stop them. With the Brutok fleet in ruins above, Admiral Wan gave the order that every Marine had been waiting for. "Launch all drop pods. Bring our people home, Captain." Wu strapped herself into her drop pod alongside 30 other Marines from the 15th Division. The pods were designed to punch through enemy defenses and deliver soldiers directly into combat zones. As the launch countdown reached 0, Wu felt the familiar crushing acceleration that would have killed most alien species. 2 humans raised, under Earth's brutal gravity. It was just another day at work. The drop pods screamed through Thailand Prime's atmosphere like falling meteors, their heat shields glowing white-hot as they plummeted toward Brutok-controlled cities. Enemy anti-aircraft fire tried desperately to intercept them, but the pods' erratic flight patterns and reinforced hulls made them nearly impossible to stop. Wu's pod slammed into the ground outside a major slave processing facility, its impact, crater smoking in the alien morning air. She emerged with her rifle ready, immediately taking cover behind nearby rubble as Brutok soldiers opened fire from defensive positions. Squad 2, this is Captain Wu, she radioed to Sergeant Ree's team. Enemy bunker at your 11 o'clock? Clear it out. Ree and her Marines moved like ghosts through the burning cityscape. These soldiers had trained in Earth's frozen tundra, where temperatures would freeze Brutok blood solid. They'd survived in deserts so hot the sand could melt metal, and swamps filled with toxins that would kill most galactic species. The urban combat environment of an alien city was nothing compared to what Earth had taught them to endure. The Brutok defenders found themselves facing an enemy unlike anything in their experience. These humans moved faster than should be possible, their reflexes honed by surviving on a world where everything tried to kill them. When Brutok plasma bolts missed their targets, the humans didn't even flinch. They'd grown up, dodging lightning strikes and avalanches. Lieutenant Day coordinated air support from his position on a rooftop overlooking the main prison complex. Strike Team Alpha, we've got eyes on the target. Marking enemy positions for close air support. Human fighters swooped low over the facility, their precision strikes eliminating Brutok defensive positions without harming the prison structures, where thousands of Thylon were held captive. The Brutok evolved on a peaceful garden world, where conflict meant territorial disputes over fruit trees. Simply couldn't comprehend this level of organized controlled violence. Within 6 hours of planetfall, every major Brutok installation was under human control. The apex predators had come to free the innocent, and nothing could stand in their way. Elder Cavi lay trapped beneath the collapsed concrete of Processing Center 7, his body broken and his hope nearly gone. The explosions had stopped hours ago, replaced by an eerie silence that filled him with dread. He expected Brutok's soldiers to find him first, to drag him back to the labor lines, or simply finish what the bombardment had started. Instead, gentle hands began moving the rubble away from his pinned body. A strange voice spoke in accented but understandable Thylon. "Easy there, friend. We're going to get you out of here." Cavi looked up to see an alien face unlike anything he'd ever imagined. The creature was tall and lean, with pale skin and kind eyes that seemed far too gentle for a warrior. The uniform marked her as Sergeant Me of something called the Terran Marines. "You are human," Cavi whispered, his voice cracking from months of thirst and exhaustion. "That's right," Me said softly, carefully checking his injuries with practiced hands. "We got your message. Sorry it took us so long to get here." She pulled out a medical scanner and began treating his wounds with equipment more advanced than anything the Thylon had ever seen dot around them. The scene was unlike anything Cavi could have imagined. Human soldiers moved through the destroyed camp with incredible efficiency, but not the brutal efficiency he'd witnessed from the Brutok. These Deathworld warriors were setting up medical stations, distributing food and water, and treating wounded Thylon with gentle care. What shocked Cavi most was seeing human medics working just as hard to save wounded Brutok prisoners. The same soldiers who had torn through enemy defenses like avenging spirits were now carefully bandaging the injuries of their former enemies, speaking to them in calm, reassuring voices. "I don't understand," Cavi said to Sergeant Me as she helped him to his feet. "Your people are capable of such terrible violence, yet you show mercy to those who enslaved us." Me paused in her work, looking around at her fellow humans as they transformed the destroyed prison camp into a field hospital. "We learned a long time ago that being strong means knowing when not to use that strength," she explained. "The Brutok chose to be monsters. We chose to be better." Cavi watched as Captain Wu coordinated the evacuation of thousands of Thylon survivors, while simultaneously ensuring that Brutok prisoners received medical attention and proper food. These humans, these apex predators from the most dangerous world in known space, had traveled hundreds of light years, not for conquest or glory, but simply because strangers had asked for help, for the first time in months. Elder Cavi truly believed his people would be free. Elder Cavi stood in his rebuilt communication center, watching the sun rise over fields of golden grain that stretched to the horizon. 1 year ago, this same land had been scarred by slave labor camps and strip mining operations. Today, Thailand children ran through the meadows, while their parents tended crops that would feed not just their own world, but several neighboring systems. The orbital defense station gleamed like a silver star above the planet. Commander J, a quiet human officer with kind eyes, had overseen its construction with typical human efficiency. The station wasn't just a military outpost, it housed schools, where Thailand youngsters learned alongside human children. Research labs where both species worked on agricultural improvements, and medical facilities that served anyone who needed help. Elder Kavi called Dr. A, the human coordinator who managed the joint colony projects. She approached with a datapad showing the latest construction reports. The new hospital wing is ahead of schedule, and we've received requests from 3 more systems asking for medical assistance. Kavi smiled, still amazed by how naturally humans worked alongside his people. These Deathworld warriors had proven to be surprisingly gentle teachers and partners. They shared their advanced technology freely, never demanding payment or political control in return. It was as if helping others was simply part of their nature. The most remarkable change wasn't on Thailand Prime, though it was happening across the galaxy. Word had spread about the humans who answered a desperate alien's call for help. Every week, new signals reached the growing network of human monitoring stations. The Vakari, enslaved by the Zorian Combine, sent coded messages hidden in trade frequencies. The peaceful Mintaka begged for protection from raiders who harvested their young. The aquatic Delphians reported that their ocean world was being poisoned by industrial mining operations. Each time, the human response was the same: fleets launched, soldiers deployed, and innocent beings were protected. The Deathworlders didn't ask for territory or tribute. They simply stopped the monsters and helped the victims rebuild. You know, Kavi said to Dr. A, as they watched human and Thailand children playing together in the distance. When I sent that message into space, I was just hoping someone, anyone, might hear us. I never imagined it would change the entire galaxy. I smiled, her weathered hands folded behind her back. Sometimes the smallest voices carry the farthest. Your people asked for help, and humanity couldn't ignore that. Now everyone knows that. Somewhere out there, the children of Earth are listening. The universe had found its guardians.